Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Talking Ruggers, the show where we talk ruggers with everyone involved in rugby who isn't only a current professional player. Everyone from content creators to online coaches, from pundits and professionals around the game to just general rugby enthusiasts. Everyone who is bringing our beloved game forward into the 21st century. And this week we have a very special content creator joining us for a lovely conversation about all things playing rugby all around the world. This guy's played rugby at the top tier across 2 hemispheres. That's right, he started off through the Bristol Academy, where he shared so much insight on what it takes to stand out as a rugby player in ways that you may not necessarily have previously thought of. An awful lot to do with mentality rather than technicality on how to stand out as a rugby player, but ultimately to actually play your best rugby and be your best self. He then continues on telling his story on how being a tackle bag holder at Bristol Bears, using his own words, wasn't enough for him, and how he then wanted to go and journey and use rugby as a vehicle to take him all across the world, which he did, going all the way down under towards Australia and New Zealand, where he learned even more about what it really means to be a rugby player, to be a good person, and to be the best version of himself out on the field, which he then brought all the way back to the UK. He's played across numerous different champ clubs and brought so much interesting insight to our conversation on what the differences are between playing at those top categories of rugby and how you too could make it for yourself. We also talk an awful lot about content creation, as that is both the medium through which we put all of our information out there. He puts it out more so through an S&C lens, but also through a rugby lifestyle lens too. And of course, I am talking about Charlie Powell. That is who I'm talking ruggers with today. If you are here listening, thank you so much for your support. If you could go down and drop a like on this episode, it'd mean the world to me. And if you're new, then why not click subscribe? Because we've got so many more content creators to talk to in the rugby sphere. And if you loved the episode, then why not go a step further and share it with a friend who you think might also enjoy this conversation? Because I know, for one, I certainly did. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the episode. Charlie, for those who may not already know who you are, in your own words, tell me, who is Charlie Powell?
So I'll start off by saying I'm Charlie Powell, the rugby player, but not only that, I'm Charlie Powell, the friend, the partner, the family man, just the teammate. And I say that, I'll probably get into a bit more into this podcast, but I want to stress that I'm all those things.
Love that, mate. Not binary, not categorizing yourself down one avenue.
Multifaceted.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because a few episodes ago I had Robbie Gillette, the South African lad, on, and he opened up with that as well. Similarly, he was like, "I am a son, I am a brother," and I was like, "Damn, that's
he's beat me
introspective."
To it.
That, yeah, no, well,
I thought I was being different by starting with that, but there you go. I've been beat to it.
It's definitely different, mate, because I think a lot of rugby players do pigeonhole themselves like that. But you've got to remember that, well, as you're very well aware, you made us clear there, rugby, although it's a big part of your life, isn't everything in your life. And I think some people get lost in it. And I definitely make it my whole personality too. So I should probably take a leaf out of your book, mate. But before we get into those details down the line, let's go to the start of the line here. Talk to me about where rugby started for you, because it's led to some really cool things. Like, you've gone on to play at the highest level. So where did it all start for you in your rugby career?
Yeah, so I mean, throwing it right back, rugby started for me, it's just something to do with my dad on the weekends. You know, like I'm sure you the same, going down to my local club, Thornbury. Yeah, it was just something that I did, bit of time with my dad on a Sunday, and something that I loved, just obviously for all the reasons that you love the game, just time with your mates, you know, going in the clubhouse afterwards, watching the first team after the game. And for me, from kind of 5 or 6 years old all the way up to being 16, that was my life. Like, going down there, I loved it. I absolutely lived for it. And then I guess when I was probably 15 or 16, that's when I started having a little look in with kind of the academy stuff with Bristol. So loved that again. Loved trying to push myself to play a little bit higher, but again, just doing it for the love of it, doing it to spend time with my mates. And I guess I moved school at 16 to go do my A levels, or 16 going on 17. So I went to posh school, went to Bristol Grammar School, and that was a move I made. I was very lucky with the support I had from my family because they supported me to go there. And that was a good move for my rugby. We both know how it works with kind of the state school, private school debate and what's a better level of rugby. But I managed to have 2 seasons playing with Bristol Grammar there, which I loved. It kind of helped me develop my rugby, but also kind of have a strong connection with Bristol. And as I kept progressing through the academy, and from there, mate, I signed my first deal as an academy player at Bristol when I was 17. Managed to make my debut at 17 as well. And then I think I spent all in all about 7 years at Bristol. So I had a good innings there. Throughout that time, I dabbled in the champ with Hartbury, had a season-long loan with Jersey, which was awesome. We won the champ that year. And most recently, I've just spent 2 seasons in New Zealand playing NPC footy over there. And between those 2 seasons, I even lived in Sydney for 4 months playing in the Shoot Shield over there, so the club competition there. And finally, most recently, I had a short stint back at Bristol just while the Prem Cup was on. And I'm currently finishing the season with Hartbury back in the champ. So yeah, I'm probably never thought I'd be, but I guess I could call myself a bit of a journeyman.
Took the words out of my mouth, mate. What a journeyman. What a journey you've been on. But clearly, at the core of it all is a love for the game. That's what keeps on coming out of your mouth, is that you just play to be around your mates, especially from a young age. Would you say that's what keeps you going? Because you're one of those people who clearly just isn't letting the dream die. You're just chasing it constantly, wanting to stay in the game, stay amongst it. And there's other people who do similar sort of things. Like the name that rings out to me is like Harry Baz at Hartbury as well, who I remember I was doing a GCSE photography project at school when I was 16. He must have been 18. He was playing for Dorset and Wilts. And I remember thinking, like, he's a good player, but he was on the bench. Like, I can't imagine much coming of him. Then because he's got quite a unique name, of course. Not going to try and attempt that, by the way. I was going to absolutely butcher it. I was butchering it on comms the other day for him. But he just carried on going through the ranks. He played for Wimborne for a long time, a town down the road from me in Bournemouth. And he has just dogged it out and stayed in the fight. But is that the mentality for you? I'm not saying that it is his mentality either, but you seem to approach it more lovingly, like you're just wanting to play as much as you can.
That's exactly it. I mean, don't get me wrong, mate. Plan A, obviously coming through the academy at Bristol, was, stay at Bristol for my whole career, pick up hundreds of appearances in the Prem, and kind of go down that route. But it wasn't, I think in 2024, so not very long ago, that kind of plan A route, ended for me. I got released by Bristol off the back of Jersey Reds going under and coming back from that. And then I was like, right, plan A's no longer a plan. I've been released. And then I guess I've had a bit of an option at that point. Like, do I don't know, just go and play club rugby and stay in Bristol, or do I keep wanting to chase it and play the highest level I can? And I guess my new philosophy, or what I've adopted at least for the last couple of years, is using rugby as an engine to travel, see the world, meet those new people. And it's been amazing. And arguably, even though it wasn't plan A, this plan B that I've kind of gone down recently has been maybe even more rewarding than what I thought was the dream and what plan A was. So, I feel very lucky.
It's funny how it all works out in the end. And rugby is such a vehicle, quite literally, to travel the world. You can go to all sorts of places that you can't even imagine even play rugby. Like, I know a friend of mine, Max Cortis, Kurt's Code, has gone to Sri Lanka, India, Brazil, like all these remote places just through rugby. It's such a phenomenal vehicle to be able to do that. But I want you to tell me more about being released and the emotions that go through you and that, because I was much the same as you. Probably not as good of a player by the sounds of things as you're still going, but I got released by Bath Academy when I was like 16, 17. So before that, the ACAD League properly started. And it's difficult when you're that age to deal with those emotions. How did you feel? How did you process that? But most of all, how did you then move forwards, not only to continue playing rugby, but access different opportunities?
Mate, I'm not gonna lie, it was really tough. Like I was gutted when I first got released. You know, I'd already been at Bristol for 7 years. I had loads of ambition with my rugby still, and to kind of get told that I was no longer getting kept on and that dream was over was really tough, mate. I remember kind of coming out of the meeting and I held it together and whatnot. But when I got home,
Did you
I
know that
definitely had
meeting
a
was coming? Did you know,
uh
like, oh, it's end of season, like it's a Tuesday? And was it Pat Lamb? Like, who was bringing you in for a chat?
Yeah, so what happened, mate? So I was meant to be in Jersey, and so I'd done basically, to tell you the full story. I think I had done about 4 years at Bristol, full time training away, kind of getting an appearance here and there when the Prem Cup was on. Had a little run when the Challenge Cup was on at Bristol, and then I was kind of getting to a stage where I wasn't ever really getting in the squad. I just felt like I was there to facilitate, a tackle shield holder, as a lot of the boys say. So that's when the kind of loan deal came about to Jersey, just to go and get consistent game time. Absolutely loved that year, like playing loads of rugby, kind of getting out of that environment of just facilitating at Bristol was really good for me. And I actually loved that year so much so that I went and signed another deal with Bristol. Bristol were really good. They wanted to keep me on. But they said, we feel like you could benefit from one more year kind of in the champ, because I looked at my playing options back at Bristol and there was, your Charles Peartel, Semi Ranjadas, Piers O'Connors, like unbelievable players who, Pat and I had quite an honest chat and we just said, look, my playing options are going to be, pretty limited back at Bristol. It was much the same as when I left. They said one more year in Jersey and maybe I could come back after that year and have a proper look in. And that was the plan. But I'm only a few months into that season. I mean, you would have seen in the news and whatnot, but Jersey Reds went under, and I was one of the lucky ones, or I think I was the only loan player that year. So I was the only lucky one that, effectively didn't miss a paycheck that month. Where it's not only that one paycheck, it's obviously the rest of the year. It's your job, isn't it? So I remember being there at Jersey, all the lads had suddenly just been told they're no longer a professional rugby player because the club didn't exist. And, I was the lucky one that got to just kind of jump on a plane and go back to Bristol. But it was a short-term save, because I went back. We do a lot of 15 on 15 training at Bristol, and I wasn't even getting into that second 15 because, Pat and the other coaches didn't plan for me to be there. And I kind of was just there, just floating around, not really having much purpose. And I guess when I had that meeting, it was with the recruitment man at Bristol, and I had that chat. I guess I wasn't stupid. Like, I was probably expecting it, but I was hoping there might have been something for me. But yeah, it didn't make it any easier. But I guess, yeah, I was somewhat expecting it based off where I saw myself in the pecking order.
It's fascinating what perspective can do with these champ lads who've just lost the dream entirely. Like, you've still got a
Oh, mate.
Premiership name to your belt, and that can do wonders. But I'm very well aware of friends of mine who get caught in almost the Premiership trap, where it's a dream come true to get paid pretty well to play at a Premiership club, but you're not ever playing. Like, I sometimes play more rugby than some professional rugby players
Mate,
because you're just playing your own level.
Mate, and that's exactly it. And it's such a dangerous trap to fall into. And I'll be honest, mate, I look back now, I've had all this experience. And, if Bristol had offered me I went into that meeting, they offered me another kind of okay contract, I would have signed it. I can tell you now, I would have signed it, and I wouldn't have had all this experience I've had. And, again, you only have to look at Bristol's squad. And if I'm honest, mate, it would have probably been another year or 2 years or whatever it would have spiraled to be, of holding tackle shields and facilitating. And to be honest, mate, I wasn't very happy. Like, I was, as I said, just facilitating for everyone else. I lacked value. I lacked purpose. The best kind of moments of my week were when I got told, "Oh, you're going on loan to Hartbury or something like that this week," because I actually got to go and play rugby. And that's why I love Jersey so much, because I was playing and I was there and I felt that value again. And I think that's a massive, massive thing. These players who stay in Premiership environments for so long, just because it's, from the outsider's perspective, it's a really impressive thing to be associated with a Premiership club. But if you're not playing and, as I said, you're facilitating, it's not a particularly fulfilling way to live. So I was lucky that decision was taken out of my hands and I was told I was getting released. So I had to go and take that jump and leave my comfort zone. But for some players, it's easy to get strung along in that sort of environment.
And it's almost even more difficult because you're cursed with this perspective of feeling inclined to be grateful for where you're at, because at the end of the day, you're a professional rugby player. You don't got to go to your 9 to 5. Like you just rock up and train, but the training's so unfulfilling. It's like someone being in a job that they don't really enjoy. Yes, it might be the industry that they love, but if they're not doing something that they actually want to do, it's tough to turn up every day. But that's the difficulty of being in part of a massive Premiership machine. Talk to me about the differences that you've learned along the way. I want to try and pick up different comparisons as we go through your rugby journey here a little bit, about what's the difference between these Prem clubs and these Champ clubs. Are they run massively differently? Of course, there's less training hours, but is it otherwise all still quite the same level of professionalism?
Mate, I'd say in a Premiership environment like Bristol, there's a whole lot of detail. You know, you're there all day. It's your full-time job. So, for example, in meetings, you know, you'll watch the training sessions back. You can watch the little details, and there's more time to go over those little details. When you're in maybe a championship environment and you might not even be full-time, you don't necessarily have the time, unless you take it onto yourself as the individual, to go over and watch all those smaller, finer details, which we both know are so important when you want to play as high as possible. So I'd say that's the main difference. There's just a massive emphasis in a Premiership environment on the little things, all the macro stuff that's expected. You're expected to be able to run, catch, pass, kick, but, you know, role detail, how well you place the ball back after you've been tackled. There's detail like that in the Premiership environment where you can go into that detail and talk about it, when maybe in the Champ or less full-time environments, you can't necessarily look at those things and with so much time.
It is interesting how, like, as the level of professionalism increases and you get paid more scrutiny comes onto you and is passed down the chain. Like, no stones can be left unturned, especially when you look at England's analysis and like the amount of adverts that I've seen over the last 2 or 3 months of their brand partnership with Apple, and you see all the insights and stuff that they gather. I don't know if you've seen those adverts, but it's fascinating that, like, there's more on the line, so you have to leave no stone unturned. Whereas the lower down the ranks of rugby you go, it's more, what's the biggest effect we can have in the smallest amount of time? We don't have time to worry about the branches of the tree. We've got to focus on the trunk and build this solid foundation right through the core. And yeah, it's difficult as you peel back. What's the challenge that most people face then as a championship player? Is it just managing that balance between that and actually having a job as well?
I guess so, mate. I think every individual's going to get on better at that Premiership environment compared to someone else. Like, every individual's different. For some people, being in a Premiership environment where you're looking at, as I said, how you place the ball, it's almost too much to think about, and that can take away from the enjoyment. But in the Champ, like, whether you might not have such an emphasis on those things, but that might be refreshing for you as a player, because it depends how you're wired, but for some people it is almost too much detail. You just want to go out and play rugby with your mates, like I was talking about earlier when I was playing my club days. But it is certainly a privilege to be full-time and get the opportunity to look at your game in that much detail. But from a championship perspective, if you're not full-time, I think it's a challenge. I think for a coach, like, it is certainly tough because the coaches are good enough when they're seeing those things, but they might not have the time to speak to everyone about it. But I guess that's the juggling act which comes with being a part-time player.
That is true, man. It's essentially, I guess, just trying to control as many of the controllables as possible. Whereas, again, like, the lower down you get, the less of those controllables you can really control because you just have less time. But
Big time.
what I want to delve into a little bit more is around the differences then in mentality between not just championship and premiership clubs, but then going to the Southern Hemisphere, because they have a very good grasp of fulfilling people's potential. And that's, again, a blessing of being a professional player, is that you get more time to fulfill your potential. It's the same with me and my business. When I went full time, I don't have to worry about my job as well as my business in the evening. I now have all the time in the world to dedicate it. So when you're a professional player, you get given that opportunity. But in New Zealand, I feel like the mindset's not even stressed around controlling every little detail. They really do emphasize that enjoyment. Is that reflected when you were out there as well, or is that just some glorified
No,
image that I have from over here?
no, honestly, mate, I was the exact same as you. I was really interested to go and see what playing rugby was like, in New Zealand. I kind of grew up, I think it used to be called the Mitre 10 Cup, and obviously it's now in the NPC. And I was hoping as an outside back that it was going to be the stereotype that you've just said of kind of throw it around, run it rugby. And if I'm honest, mate, I'd say as a whole, it lived up to that expectation. It was the perfect balance. I don't know for anyone listening now if they know much about the NPC, but it's effectively Super Rugby minus like all the All Blacks and any other international players. So it's a really good level. You're playing in all the best stadiums around New Zealand. So for me, it was like the ultimate experience. I got to play at Eden Park, and when I was at Otago, our home stadium was Forsyth Bar Stadium, this big stadium under this like greenhouse type roof. It was unbelievable, and the type of rugby we were encouraged to play was exactly that stereotype we said around having a crack, have a go. When I was at Southland in my first year, they always used to say "have a go Southland" was their little motto that they used to say, and it was like that. You'd play a lot of run it rugby, so I loved it. It was an amazing experience for me. Don't get me wrong, like they're good rugby players over there. They know when the time to set a ruck and do a kick, but I'd say I think us in the Northern Hemisphere, I mean, it'd be interesting to see like Premiership versus Super Rugby, more games that happen like that. But I definitely think the Prem is going that way where you're starting to see teams like Bristol or Quins and those sort of attacking sides play a bit more like what that stereotype of Super Rugby is. But I think we as the Northern Hemisphere need to just keep leaning into that because it's such a better spectacle to watch. And as for us as players, it's so much more fun to play in.
They do have such a focus on those basic skills. I remember that was the answer I gave you in the questions you were asking me the other week.
Yeah.
It's a bit of content. I was like, what's the like you asked me what's the most important thing for a coach to see in like younger players or for a player trying to improve? And I said basic skills. It's such a boring answer, but it's also very true because they can play that style of rugby because they're so able to chuck the ball around. It'd be fascinating to get your insight as you traveled around the country to have a bit more understanding on how the pathways work over there. Like you mentioned your time growing up in the Bristol ACAD system. Does it run on a similar operation? Are these kids being taught like shape and systems from a young age, or is it more just a focus on those basic skills? How does it work compared to how you grew up in rugby?
Yeah, I think, I mean, someone listening to Southern Hemisphere might tell me I'm wrong here. I think the academy systems are similar in terms of, they have like development sides and younger players before they're even contracted work through the academy. But I'd say the main point of difference over there is their club rugby. Like in England, we're very lucky. There's 10 different leagues in England, I think, or pretty much goes all the way from, Prem
levels,
all the way down to, level 10 or whatever. But in New Zealand, like it's club rugby. I think in the different provinces, you have your club rugby competition, and you could have, I don't know, Tava Nawai, Highlanders captain playing in for a club rugby game, and then next week he might be playing for the All Blacks, and it really can just move around like that. So it's crazy how it works, and I quite like how they do it over there. There's not too much ego associated around going and playing club. Like as I said, if a Super Rugby player gets told they're going to go play club, they go and play club. And from what I saw, everyone was pretty happy to go and do that. They were just keen to play rugby, and they actually had a lot of pride in what club they played for and were associated with. So I remember I had to get like assigned a club, and all the boys were all giving me their spiel about which club I should go for. But yeah, I'd say that's the main point of difference I noticed.
It's just part of the culture. Not that I've been. I'm planning on going before the year's done, but it's just clearly wired into society over there. I remember seeing footage of Dan Carter, like you're saying, playing for his local team. I was like,
Yeah.
First of all, that doesn't seem very fair. I mean, one of the greatest players of all time, just rocking up on a Saturday. The ultimate your man. I remember seeing Arlie Surveyor doing the same. They played him at fullback. Imagine that being run back at you. Absolutely not.
No,
But
it's crazy.
it's clearly like it's just part of the culture. Rugby is there to be played, not to be drilled into you. And I think that might be where it's lost a little because, like tying back to what we're talking about, controlling the controllables, and the more professional the game becomes, the more pressurized coaches are to minimize any opportunity for variance or unpredictability. Whereas
Mm.
they almost seem as if they thrive off that unpredictable game over in New Zealand. Like they just love the free running rugby. Like, yes, like you're saying, they know when to set a box kick up and they know how to do that boring stuff. But it seems like in the UK, I wonder how much of it is conditions oriented. You know, it rains a
Mm.
lot. I suppose it does rain a lot in New Zealand as well, but it
Yeah.
seems to be more structure focused, getting your pods of 3, learn how to resource the breakdown, you know, one clears past one. And it's almost systematic compared to
Mm.
systemless rugby that you see over there.
Yeah, I can tell you now there's a massive emphasis on transition when I was playing in New Zealand. Like anytime there was a turnover, it's like move the ball, play to space. And it was almost like, I mean, we call it conditioned games where you're just kind of throwing the ball around and almost trying to avoid breakdowns. Like that's how they wanted to play. So as I said, a bit biased, but as an outside back, I was all for it. So I really enjoyed playing like that.
I'd term it as being rugby moments where you have, like, say you got a 1-3, this is getting pretty noisy now. You got a 1-3-3-1 shape, you know, you've got your system, but the whole point of that system is to create rugby moments. So you have 2 forward hit ups and then you have an edge. And now it's like, all right, here's a rugby moment. You've done the 2 boring bits, you've got a bit of momentum. Now play ball, like just chuck it around and see what you can happen. And that's where that skill set of the Southern Hemisphere's players who have that exact mentality, not only in those wide channels, but also amongst the tip lines, the offloads to create that momentum in the first place, really come through. And I think that's their massive point of difference when it comes to challenging the Northern Hemisphere. Like we'll see in the Nations Championship coming up. It's going to be interesting, that clash of styles almost.
100%. I mean, I think the best moments in rugby come from loose ball. I mean, it's a bit of a joke, but some of the best tries happen after a bounce pass or something like that. Like it's just the way it goes. And when you've got such good players, you know, these Super Rugby players or Premiership players, when that almost pressure's taken off, where the ball bounces and you're almost out of system, that's when you can just kind of light up and have a go.
Exactly, those rugby moments. But without us getting too bogged down in the details of
Yeah.
nauseating rugby chat, I wanted to go into more detail around your specific situation right now. Talk us through where you're at and how you've started to actually document this journey you've been on through rugby. Where did that start, and what's the purpose of this?
Yeah, so I think what inspired me to kind of start my page and start content was probably what you said about controlling the controllables. I think as I kind of touched on, like when I was at Bristol, I was in quite a frustrating position, you know, tackle shield holder, facilitating. And I think I just wanted more from my days. And I was like, what can I do which is for me and not about the team? And don't get me wrong, I'm all for helping the team and making sure they're ready for the game on Saturday. But it was getting frustrating when I felt like I was putting my all, doing everything I could, but it was kind of all for that 23 going out on the weekend. So I think for me, when I looked at the things I could control, that was obviously my attitude with my training. And then a big one was my attitude towards the gym. And that was something, if I went and smashed my gym session during my training day, that was for me. So I started just making sure, I mean, I've always been into it, but like I made sure that when I went in to train, I smashed my gym session. I did every set, every rep, did some extras, because that was something that, to say it again, was for me. And then on the content side of things, if I then started to film my gym session or go and film me doing some skills or do a day in the life or whatever that might be, I could then go home, post that and grow my personal brand, which was for me. So I think it was an outlet for me to do something for myself, because I was in a situation where I was getting quite frustrated, constantly facilitating everyone else. So I think that's the honest answer as to what started my page. And I guess in terms of the niche of the S&C side of things that I went down, I think that was almost a vehicle for me it was the first thing I thought of when I wanted to post, because I wanted to share my training, and I guess there's a bit of accountability coming into play as well. If I was posting it, I knew I was going to have to do it. And yeah, I think that's what started my page for me, really.
Well, I've loved seeing it. It's true. Like, it's a common story for a lot of S&C oriented accounts is that accountability piece where it's, it keeps you in check. It makes sure that you have to turn up, because if you don't, then you're going to probably get some stick from people for starting
Yeah.
social media and not following through. But to see the journey that you've been on, to be out in other parts of the world and take, the people sat back at home over in the UK with you for that, to see all the way that rugby's played in different parts of the world, I think it's been insightful and enjoyable. But what is it that you want to do with it now? What's the plans moving forwards? Is it to continue playing rugby around the world? Are you trying to set up a little base here to build something more business oriented?
Yeah, so that's a very topical question because I'm figuring it out right now. I mean, I'm still really aspirational with my rugby, so I'm not going to rule out, if an opportunity came my way to go and chase full-time rugby and, give myself more experience, then I'm still open to that. But I'm equally very aware that that dream is something that may not happen. And equally, I want to put myself in a position where either way, I'm going to make the most of it. If that opportunity comes, then fantastic. If it doesn't come, I'm going to be more than likely Bristol based and trying to grow my business. So in-person coaching, online coaching, hopefully still playing a decent level of rugby and kind of living that sort of life. So it's a balancing act I'm trying to get right as we speak, but that's the rough plan with it. And I really enjoy making content. So wherever I go, whatever I end up doing, I'm still going to be putting stuff online and using that as a bit of a creative outlet for myself.
I love to hear it. What would you say, through the lens of your S&C work? You clearly take things very professionally, and clearly, from your first answer to the first question, you're an introspective bloke as well. Give some advice to the listener at home. Maybe they're a young lad who wants to make it to the professional top flight. Give us a few things, maybe 3, of what they should do from the ages of 14 through to 18 to secure themselves a contract in that final year, drawing from your experience from all over the world at all different playing levels. What are the things that are really going to help people to stand out to get that contract?
I think again, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's not though, because I'm passionate about this. The biggest thing I could tell any aspiring player at whatever level, whatever age, is just to enjoy it. Like it truly is the most important thing. I think what's the quote is the man who loves walking will walk further than the man who loves the destination. I've probably ruined that quote, but it was something like that. I try and live by that. Like you can't force yourself to love something, but I think you'll know when you know when you do. I had a chat recently with my brother about he was making some decisions on work, and I said where you feel like you've got the most energy towards, because that shows where probably your passion is. And it's the same for a rugby player. Like you'll know when you're passionate about it, and it will feel easy because you've got so much passion and love for it. So that's my number one bit of advice. You can't fake it because you'll get found out. So go where that energy takes you. It will feel easy when you've got that energy and you've got that love. And if that is playing rugby with your mates, then that's amazing. It will take you a long way just by having that love and desire for it.
It's so difficult for young players to get their head around that, because I know for one, I couldn't. I thought, I want to be a professional rugby player. I've got to take this seriously. If I want to get to the top, I'm not going to do it by laughing and having a good time with my mates. The only way I'm going to get there is by knuckling down, playing with a frown on my face, really getting myself, especially for a contact sport, in the zone for it. And then I'm almost cursed now of the image of players I grew up with who have made it all the way to the top, and I never played with them too much, only at county rugby, but the best example being Max Ajomu, who is just the happiest, cheekiest lad on the rugby pitch. Like, always had a chuckle in him, had a smile on his face, was a serious competitor, but just played with this freedom because it just felt like, I'm just here to chuck a ball around and I'm playing rugby. I'm not drilled into doing certain things. I'm just playing a game, is the impression that he gave off to me in hindsight now. But it's so difficult because you care so much. And when you care so much, you want to control all those variables that we've been speaking about. And it's that balance where you realize that, again, drawing on what we've spoken about from looking in the Southern Hemisphere, when you play with that freedom just to focus on those rugby moments rather than fitting in a structure and doing your due diligence of your process, all of a sudden you just become this free player within that system to go and express yourself. And then when you double down on that and do it with only the desire to express yourself and enjoy yourself, then you've really unlocked your full potential.
100%. And I think that's the challenge like players face in the professional game. I know for me, as soon as, you start getting paid to play, like there is that pressure. And as I spoke about earlier, you start looking at the finer details and it can start to become a bit more overwhelming. So having that deep rooted love for the game is something that you've always just got to come back to whenever you're feeling a bit overwhelmed with all the detail and, I don't know, learning plays and making sure that you play well because it's your job. So yeah, it's a massive thing. Just loving it, because certainly in the professional game it can start to get pretty overwhelming.
Have you ever dealt with that, a bit of fatigue in the professional world where you may not actually enjoy it? You mentioned the granular nature around the detail of things and how it can actually take the fun away from it. Did you ever suffer that? Because again, it's difficult to say you have, because you're a professional rugby player, right? You should be living the dream.
I know, and mate, there's an element of guilt when you're a professional rugby player, as you just said, living the dream, and then you're going to training and you're not happy and I think it can come in any walk of life. If you go into somewhere, whether it's your job or any sort of hobby that you have, and you don't feel valued and you don't feel like you've got a role to play to contribute, then it is tough to enjoy it. And yeah, that's not to say I think I do have that deep. I know I've got I love rugby. I love the game. So I think I've luckily always been able to come back to that. But yeah, you'll certainly you'd get found out if you didn't have that deep love for it, because there are tough times and when you're playing professionally, because you're expected to be able to do so much and it is your job. So you've got to perform.
There's always going to be the bits you don't enjoy in any job. There's always the admin to do. There's always the S&C training, or it might be that you have to do the contact prep. Maybe that's what you don't enjoy. But so there's going to be parts of it that you don't enjoy, and it's going to go on for a long time. So if you're really going to sustain yourself, you've got to enjoy it. If you're going to be in it for the long haul, you have to have fun along the way, because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult to turn up and put your body in those difficult places to be in, which is
Exactly it.
so fascinating from a mental point of view, because like you're saying, there's a guilt potentially around it because you are a professional player, that you feel, God, maybe I should be more grateful for where I'm at. But that's a tough place.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'll strip it back to that man who loves walking. He's always going to walk further than the guy who loves the destination, doesn't he? So yeah, just it's not to get too philosophical here, but it's the same with life. You focus too much on that the end point when you think you're going to be happy or when you think you're going to feel fulfilled or make it, then you'll get you'll get lost along the way and you'll stop enjoying the present. So try and enjoy those little processes that you do day to day, and that's what I always try and remind myself.
I think an important thing actually here is that the only absolute statement is that there are no absolutes. And one shouldn't only focus on just having fun. You've got to have a guiding light. You've got to steer your energy towards something, having a goal, having a mission, but having your entire self-worth wrapped up in that, like you suggested at the start with your answer to the first question, is another way to lose yourself in the game. If you just
100%.
become a rugby player and nothing more, not only are you shafting yourself because a career is only at the most 35 years, then you're going to find yourself in a difficult spot when you lose that.
100%, mate. And that leads me on to something I'm pretty passionate about. I think I don't want to get too deep here, but when I was 18, I actually lost my mum, and I remember I was young and that happened and couldn't really process what had just happened. But I remember at the time thinking, right, I'm going to make my mum proud. I'm going to play as high level rugby as possible. I'm going to go and be the best rugby player I can be, and it's all going to be for her. And it worked to a certain extent in terms of I was dialed in when I got to training, and I was always focused, obviously. But as soon as rugby stopped going my way, I had an injury or a few non-selections back to back. I started kind of thinking, I had that pressure on me. I was letting my mum down, and you can get yourself in quite a hole when you start thinking of it like that. So I think that's the reason when we started this, and I said, I'm Charlie Powell, the rugby player, but I'm also Charlie Powell, the friend, the partner, the teammate, family man. And that's something I try and hold myself to, because it's only now I'm a little bit older and maybe a little bit wiser. I look back and think, shoot, I really did put a lot of pressure on myself to make my mum proud through rugby, which is probably not the way to do it. But it's definitely not. And I think, again, getting a bit deep and philosophical, but like, I now look at things and I try and make my mum proud by being a good person, having good morals. Just it's process driven. It's things that I can control, and it's not outcome based, because you can get yourself in a hole if you start looking at things like that.
Mate, what a story. I didn't know that. Well, I'm sorry to hear it, but it sounds like she's still doing you wonders, mate, and putting you on the right path. And like you say, it's led to some really cool things. Going around the world to play rugby it's a dream come true, arguably a better dream than being an international player. Who wants that anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Don't want it.
From your travels then, mate, from all the knowledge you've acquired, all the experience you've accumulated, I want to look forwards into the future of rugby. How would you change the game for the better from your experience playing in these different places?
Yeah, I think I'll probably touch on again what I've said earlier around, I think as players, and I know as a rugby fan, like, you want to play and you want to watch fast paced, exciting rugby, as you said, that you want to see rugby moments. So I think as players, you can see the game going in that direction, but I think we just got to lean into that and play a brand of rugby which is exciting. And obviously, you're going to have coaches with different philosophies, and as a player, you've got to kind of do as your coach says. But hopefully, we'll start to see the game get quicker, more bounce passes, more just loose, free flowing rugby. So I think that's what the future of the game looks like. I think you'll start to see forwards who look a bit more like backs. Obviously, the scrum's still going to be a big part of the game, but we can already see in today's game your Bennells and your Henry Pollocks and Nardi Severes, those sort of players are definitely the future of the back row. And I think they're the future of what rugby players are going to look like.
How would you go about encouraging that free-flowing rugby? Is there any law changes that you'd make?
Oh, that's a good question. Double points for a bounce pass try, I reckon, mate. No, I'm trying to think. No, obviously they brought in the 50-22, which was supposed to open a bit more space up in that front line. There could be some more rules that come along on the similar sort of premise of that, mate. But to be honest, no, I'm strictly a player of the game. I don't know too much about making new rules, but I think there could be a few rule changes which encourage that brand of rugby for sure.
Just doing as you're told. Yes, sir.
Exactly,
I shall follow the laws of the game. Someone else is responsible for that.
Yeah.
What about through like a content lens then? Of course, you've documented your journey playing around the world. You've started to delve into the S&C world as well. Talk us through what potential movements you could be seeing made in the content space to benefit rugby.
Yeah, mate, I think we're already slowly starting to see it. And we're definitely seeing it in the women's game. But I think just more personalities are going to come out, mate. It's a classic, but your Henry Pollocks of the rugby world. It won't just be then. Hopefully, it will be a number of different characters, because rugby, I love the sport because there are so many different characters. Every squad's got a couple or maybe more than a couple of weirdos like sort of characters, and hopefully they'll start showing their personalities. And then every squad's got a joker. Like, hopefully the game, because it is quite old school in its values, isn't it, rugby? Like, I remember, it's still now, I get my phone out and film, and some of certainly the older heads of the squad potentially don't like seeing that, and I know there are reasons why, but I think the game will just become a lot more open to people having personalities, people producing content and putting stuff out there, because I think that is a massive missing piece. You see the characters that come, I mean, I can't say this is a bit over the top, but from boxing and other sports like that, and you think rugby could probably do a bit more of that. And I'm not talking face-offs or weigh-ins, and could go that way, but maybe more just rugby players having a bit more of a personal brand and really showing that, because I think it's definitely going to go that way,
especially the world of content. It's just more. That's the answer, really, isn't it? More access, more consumable content for people to watch and more personality. I think there's so
Mm,
many unique people in our beloved game that have personalities, but don't necessarily either have the means to express themselves or the environment to express themselves. Like expressing yourself on the field is one thing, but being able to actually have a personality that resonates with audiences off the field is as significant, because then it gives those same people a reason to watch the game who might not even like or know the game.
definitely.
That desire to watch Ellie Kildunn play, if you'd never watched women's rugby before, it's a route in. Because rugby's so complicated, people aren't necessarily just going to start watching it and start learning the game. But if you give them another reason to watch, whether that's
Yeah.
a personality in the mainstream media or whether that's turning up to a game day with a party going on around the ground, either way is a reason to rock up beyond the game itself. And that only comes through more content, more access, more everything for everyone.
I couldn't agree more, mate. I think the future might have, these top professional players. I reckon they'll have little kind of apprentice filmers just walking around with them, and it'll get even bigger because I think there'll be such a demand. Like imagine now, like I mean, I think I'm trying to think of a big player who does that. I think Marcus Smith does a little bit of stuff on YouTube and puts a bit of content out there. But if you've got these players that young people look up to, or even players like myself might look up to, like, and you see them putting out content, then you're going to watch that. And it's, as you just said, it's even more of a reason to go and watch the international game on the weekend or the Premiership game on the weekend.
I think the biggest challenge that solution faces is that battle between old and young mentalities, where, as we've spoken about so much in this episode, controlling the controllables is the top focus for every professional coach and player. And if there's any distraction from
Mm,
controlling those controllables that is in the public eye to be seen, because there's plenty of distractions in camps. I'm sure plenty of people have plenty of vices which hold them back from fully performing properly. But when it's such a public one as creating content, that's when a shadow of doubt casts over the player themselves, because it's like, all right, why aren't you focusing on your primary job here of being a rugby player, even if they potentially are, even if because of the content they're doing more like you do?
mate, I completely agree. It's something that I have to battle with. I've done it for a while now, so I kind of know where that line is and what's crossing it and what's not when it comes to filming and setting your camera up or whatever. But I think that is going to be a challenge that the game's going to face when, you might have an important meeting and someone's trying to film, or you're in the gym and it's actually some quite important work that you're doing. And then lads are more focused about getting the perfect angle than they are about smashing their set. So it's a tough, tough area to know where the line is, as I said. But I think hopefully, I don't know the exact answer to it, but hopefully people will know where that line is. And I think more often than not, it's a reason to just completely block content out and say, look, it's not allowed in the gym, or just don't film anything at training. But I feel like that's just a bit of a cop out if clubs are doing that, because there's so much value that the players can provide, whether that's ticket sales or people buying jerseys or whatever. Like if the club encourages players to have personalities and show it, there's so much positives. I think it massively outweighs the negatives of maybe a player getting leaked or missing a set in the gym. I don't know.
It's so short-sighted. You learn this at business school about the marketing mix and the 4 Ps of marketing being product, price, place, and promotion. Price is already something we're dealing with, which is difficult. The prices of games are already pretty high, so that's something we're going to face. But the focus of these old heads is product over promotion. The place, again, you can't really control. It's just is where it is. But creating a good atmosphere, a good environment for the games is important. The packaging surrounding the game is an important thing. But the old heads are so focused on the product, they're forgetting the promotional side of things. It's all well and good having a great product, but if you don't promote it properly, if you don't present it in front of the right people and get them to engage in the right way so they turn up, you're not going to have a game anymore. It doesn't
Mm.
matter how good it is, and they'll tell you that as long as the game's good, we'll be all right. It's like, that is true to some extent, And of course, the product itself has improved with the iteration of these new laws that have come along the way. But without understanding the P of promotion, it's going to die a death. You've got to have the
I
dual effect. You've got to approach both.
I think someone told me this when they were in New Zealand. They were like, I don't know why. I've never thought of it. I've done this job for like, playing rugby for nearly 10 years now. And someone said when I was in New Zealand, they said, we're in the entertainment industry. And I kind of laughed when he said, oh, we're in the entertainment industry. Because I thought, no, we're sports people, we're rugby players. But like, obviously, that's exactly what we are. We are entertainers. Like, so by having those, rules around not filming, or the old school head saying they don't want personalities and they don't want they just want players to fit a mold, then where's the entertainment in that if everyone's the same and everyone's just told how to be? So I think I'm all for it. Like, players showing personality. The game's definitely going to go in that direction. It has to.
Bang on. It's gladiatorial. Like, going back to the most purest form of sport, being a gladiator. Like, it's not about the actual skill and technique. It's an entertainment. People rock up there, same as going to the theatre. And when you realize that athletes aren't only competing with other athletes, they're also competing with other sports. They're competing with watching a movie on a Friday night rather than watching the rugby. It's all entertainment. And I'll tell you what, Charlie, you're doing a great job of entertaining people in the process. And if they are still here listening to this incredibly entertaining podcast, then they are a top Nors. So they're going to help you out. Tell them how they can do that, mate. How can they support you? What's your socials? Give yourself a plug and how people can help
plug
out.
myself. Oh, go on then, mate. The one way is just following and engaging in my content. ChaPow _training is my Instagram and TikTok. I think I'm Charlie Powell 13 on YouTube, which I'm dabbling in. That's a work in progress. But yeah, my big one I put a lot of energy into is my Instagram. ChaPow, like the start of Charlie and the start of Powell. So any follows or any engagement on that, I really appreciate.
Grand. Go check it out, guys, because Charlie does some really cool things. And thank you so much for coming on, Charlie. It was a really insightful conversation. It's not exactly the way I was expecting it to go, but that's even more entertaining for me. I hope you guys at home enjoyed it as well. If you did, you know what to go. Drop a like on the episode. If you really, really loved it, then you might even consider subscribing, so you are well aware of when all these podcast episodes come out every Tuesday, typically. But otherwise, if you loved it, give it a share. Go share it with a friend. Share the joy of rugby with them too. Charlie, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it, mate. That was great.
Thanks so much for having me, mate. I appreciate it.